Having lost my husband, I was living alone. My son and his wife pressured me to live with them, and I casually agreed. However, they dumped all the household chores on me, didn't look after their son, Ethan, and wouldn't contribute to the household expenses. Then one day, after leaving Ethan in their care to attend my nephew's wedding, I came home to find Ethan collapsed in a hot room. Fortunately, Ethan was okay, but I was furious and called my eldest son, Mark. "Where the hell are you two? We're on vacation." I was speechless at their cheerful response. "He's always underfoot. Always crying. I mean, we're being such good kids, aren't we? Letting you live with your grandson and even letting you take care of him. You should be more grateful, don't you think?" That's right. I clenched my fist at Jessica's smug comment. Looking at Ethan's sweet sleeping face, I made a vow. "I'll take matters into my own hands for you. Mark, Jessica, just wait and see. My name is Karen, a 55-year-old housewife. I was devastated last year by the death of my husband, who was 10 years my senior, due to illness. Even though we had an age gap, we were very close. Let's watch movies or go to museums together once I retire." But that dream never came true. I felt lost thinking about how to spend the second half of my life alone. That's when Mark called me with the suggestion to live together. However, I wasn't overjoyed. Mark, during his teens, was busy dating multiple girls and not focusing on his studies, leading to constant arguments with my strict husband. After high school, he declared he was gonna live with his girlfriend and left home, cutting off all contact. Even when my husband was in the terminal stage of cancer, we couldn't get in touch with him. He only made it to the wake thanks to a call from a close nephew. So, I was naturally cautious when Mark called after such a long time. "Mom, it's been a while. You doing okay even without Dad around?" "I guess. Must be lonely living all by yourself, right? If we live with you, it'll be more lively. It might distract you a bit." Didn't I mention it at the funeral? That I got married with my girlfriend? I didn't hear that. At my husband's funeral, once the service was over, Mark went over to chat with the nephews, so I hardly spoke with him. "Her name's Jessica. She couldn't come last time because Ethan had a fever." I couldn't believe that the mischievous Mark I knew was now a father. I felt quite moved. "I'll bring my son along, so why not live together?" His casual tone struck me as odd. "You must be feeling lonely living by yourself, right? I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm only 55. I still have the energy to work full-time. If you live with us, Jessica can help you with the household chores." I did find that appealing. Despite feeling young at heart, I'm still 55. I can feel my energy waning day by day. "We can try it out at first. If it doesn't work, we can stop living together." "Well, maybe we could give it a try." On the other side of the call, I could hear a woman's excited voice. It seems to be Jessica, Mark's wife. "Oh, mother-in-law? Hi there, it's Jessica." Jessica, taking over the call, greeted me in a sweet voice. "We're moving in tomorrow. So glad. Our apartment lease ends this month." "Wait, tomorrow?" "All right then, see you." She hung up abruptly. Caught off guard by this sudden turn of events, I murmured to myself while holding my cell phone. "Well, if it doesn't work out, we can always stop living together. I do want to see my grandson." But this turned out to be the beginning of several challenges. Once we started living together, I was taken aback by the selfishness of my son and his wife. I had assumed Mark, with a wife and child, would be responsibly employed, but he was job hopping. He had a string of excuses like, "The work environment doesn't suit me," or "The new guy's too arrogant," and had switched jobs 8 times in just 4 years of marriage. To think that Jessica supports Mark, and yet she's been a stay-at-home mother simply because she finds working a hassle. Even after moving in with me, she seems to just laze around all day, watching TV or playing on her phone. Since I work full-time, I thought it'd be helpful if she could pitch in with some chores, so I asked Jessica for help. But even though she agreed in a heartbeat, when I come home, dishes were still left in the sink, and the bathtub still had water in it. Even if there's a sudden downpour, the laundry isn't brought in and is left outside to become damp. When I pointed this out, Jessica got defensive. "I wasn't just playing around. I'm busy taking care of a 2-year-old. Yet, the living room floor is littered with empty snack wrappers and crumbs, and Ethan's diaper is bulging. To make matters worse, there was no sign that Ethan had lunch, and he clung to my leg as soon as he saw me.
Grandma, I'm hungry. Can I have some food?
Huh? Jessica, didn't you feed him lunch? Well, there's no frozen rice or instant curry. You expect me to go shopping with a toddler? I was flabbergasted. The supermarket is just a 5-minute walk away. There was an empty cup noodle container in the sink. She must have eaten that herself. What kind of parent does that? I was furious. From then on, I started preparing sandwiches and other lunches that Ethan could eat before I left for work. I reported this to Mark, but he's head over heels for Jessica, so he just chuckled and took her side.
Mom, Jessica is tired too. Taking care of a 2-year-old ain't easy, you know.
Come to think of it, I've never seen you change Ethan's diaper or play with him. I'm always the one giving him baths.
I always appreciate everything you do, Mom.
Despite their usual negligence, when my son and his wife were annoyed, they would scold Ethan.
You made me forget to save my game. Didn't I tell you to stay quiet in bed? Why are you getting up? I'm watching my show.
When they yelled, and Ethan started crying, they would glare and shout.
Quiet down!
Each time, I would wipe away Ethan's tears and smile gently at him. Granny will read you a storybook. I'll stay with you till you fall asleep.
Okay.
As time passed, whenever I was about to leave for work, Ethan would look at me with a sad face and seem to prefer staying by my side more than with his parents. He's not a cute kid at all. Mark and Jessica became more irritated by this. One day, I received an invitation to my nephew's wedding. Son of my younger sister, Susan, is having a wedding. I couldn't take 2-year-old Ethan with me, so I asked Mark to babysit. Surprisingly, he agreed right away. I've got work till noon, so I can't attend. Jessica and I will watch Ethan at home. Say hi to Aunt Susan for me. When I called Susan, she sounded disappointed. Well, work is work. Can you make it, sis? Yes, let's grab a coffee afterward. The day before the wedding, I reminded Jessica. After the ceremony, I'm gonna stop by a cafe with my sister, so I'll be back in the evening. Here's some money to buy lunch. As I handed Jessica a $100 bill while she was lounging on the couch, she quickly put aside the ticket she was gazing, her eyes lighting up.
Okay, thank you.
It seemed strange to me, a grandmother, having to ask my daughter-in-law to look after my grandson. Nonetheless, I headed to the wedding. The newlyweds looked so fresh and happy, and I felt blessed by their happiness. However, while at the cafe with Susan, as we chatted about our children, I had an uneasy feeling. I soon realized the cause of my unease. Last night, what Jessica hastily hid was 2 airplane tickets. Were they planning to leave, abandoning little Ethan? I finished my tea, told Susan. I'll call again. And hurried home. Upon opening the front door, the house was eerily quiet. Mark and Jessica's usual sneakers were lined up in the entrance, alongside Ethan's tiny shoes. I took off my heels, and looking down the hall, noticed the living room door wide open. Having the air conditioning on like that is pointless. But then again, even though the AC was running, the hallway felt unusually warm. Entering the living room with a sinking feeling, I found Ethan lying down, the room as hot as a sauna.
Ethan!
I grabbed the AC remote from the floor and turned it on. Stripping Ethan's clothes off, I applied cold packs and all the ice packs I had from the freezer to his neck and underarms. Luckily, it seemed Ethan was just asleep.
Granny, welcome back.
His innocent smile brought me to my knees. I helped Ethan drink some sports drink, changed his sweat-soaked clothes, and took him to the hospital just to be sure. He was diagnosed with no heat stroke, and I felt a sigh of relief. Back home, once things had settled down, I asked Ethan. Ethan, where did Mommy and Daddy go?
Not sure.
Ethan tilted his head adorably.
Mommy told me that Granny would be back soon and to be a good boy. So, I was good.
His sparkling eyes made my heart ache. I knelt down and hugged Ethan, saying softly, Ethan, you're always a good boy. But you're only 2, so it's okay to be a little selfish sometimes.
I'm gonna be 3 soon.
That's right, we'll celebrate. After giving Ethan a bath and putting him to bed, I called Mark, struggling to keep my irritation in check. What's wrong, Mom? Without missing a beat, I yelled at Mark.
Are you out of your mind? Leaving a 2-year-old home alone. He was drenched in sweat and passed out.
Huh? I had the AC on. He must have messed with the button and turned it off. Mark didn't even seem to be concerned about Ethan's condition. Makes me wonder if he's really a father.
So, where the hell are you two now?
We're on a trip. Jessica chimed in cheerfully, leaving me speechless.
Excuse me? We're in Guam. The blue ocean and white sandy beaches are so beautiful.
We never had our honeymoon. Figured Ethan would be okay till evening. He gets in the way, always crying.
Speaking of which, we've been pretty darn good to you, haven't we? Letting you live with your grandson and even having you care for him. You could be a bit more grateful if you ask me.
That's right. Their irresponsible remarks made me clench my fists.
You do know Ethan's birthday is in 4 days? You'll be back by then, right?
Oh, totally forgot about that. Just buy him a toy or a cake or something. We'll be back over the weekend.
Fine, I'll do that. Thanks, take care.
After hanging up, I quietly made my way to the bedroom. Opening the door, I saw Ethan sound asleep, cuddling his teddy bear. Looking at his angelic face, I made a vow. Ethan, I just can't forgive your parents. I'll make sure they pay. Mark, Jessica, just you wait and see. What kind of punishment should I impose on these two, so oblivious to their roles as parents? After a restless night fueled by anger, I called my workplace the next morning and took 5 days off. I needed to efficiently get things done before my son and his wife returned. I searched online for several realtors, and by the afternoon, an agent came over to appraise the house. Though 20 years old, we renovated the bathrooms 5 years ago. Located on the southeast corner with a yard and parking space, and just a 5-minute drive to the train station. Given the favorable conditions, every company gave us a good offer. We desperately paid off the loan taken out under my husband's name with both of us working, and right after we finished paying it, my husband passed away. My son and his wife moved in and dumped their child and house chores on me, acting as if they owned the place. I'm sure they'll kick me out when I get old and take over this house. It's a house that I love with memories of my husband, but it'd be better to sell it to a complete stranger than let those two ruin it. While waiting for a buyer for the house, I decided to get the locks changed. They said they could do it right away, and shortly after I called, the locksmith arrived and had everything done in 2 hours. I couldn't help but chuckle imagining my son and his wife panicking outside, unable to get in. I called Susan and told her everything, and she was livid on the other end of the phone.
Listen, I hate to ask, but can Ethan and I stay with you until we find a place? Of course, we'll pitch in for food and utilities.
Why were you being so formal? Just bring Ethan over to my place. I've been divorced and my husband's gone. My son's moved out after getting married. I've got plenty of space.
Yeah, sorry it's so sudden. Thank you.
I was genuinely grateful for Susan's kindness. The problem was Ethan. After Ethan woke up from his nap, I prepared a slice of watermelon and a tablet for him to watch some cartoons, and casually asked him, "Hey,
what's up?
How'd you feel about living with Grandma at Aunt Susan's?" Ethan, wide-eyed, took a moment before responding.
I won't see Mommy and Daddy anymore?
You can see them whenever you want, Ethan. We just won't live with them.
Okay then, that's fine.
Ethan agreed, more easily than I expected.
You'll be with me, right Grandma?
Of course, sweetheart. Ethan beamed at me and resumed his cartoon as if nothing had happened. I quietly sighed in relief. I wasn't sure how much Ethan understood about the situation, but he might have sensed his parents' neglect. A fresh wave of anger rose in me towards my son and his wife for making a 2-year-old go through this. Afterwards, I contacted a moving company for an estimate, packed our belongings and furniture, and moved to Susan's house. With Susan's help, I finished unpacking. Once everything was in order, we celebrated Ethan's 3rd birthday. We decorated with origami and dollar store items, and celebrated with a homemade cake and chicken fried rice. It was a simple celebration, but Ethan's eyes sparkled with joy.
Wow, Grandma, Aunt Susan, thank you.
Ethan, I know you love trains but didn't have any. Hope you like this one. When Susan and I handed over a train track set, Ethan jumped for joy and immediately started assembling it. Sis, do you think he's never received a gift before? Whispering Susan made me frown.
The storybooks and toys I gave him for his birthday and Christmas are nowhere to be found. Maybe Mark and Jessica sold them online.
The only items Ethan brought with him when he moved were a sandbox set, some clothes, a teddy bear, and a few storybooks. It seemed too little for his age. While Ethan and I were connecting tunnels and bridges, I got a call from Mark. I ignored the ring for a while and then moved to the next room to answer it. Mark's voice sounded almost tearful.
Mom, what's going on? My key doesn't work. You changed the locks. You're so sly.
Jessica also shouted on the phone.
Open the door now. Why are we being kicked out of our own house?
It's my house. You guys just barged in and stayed.
You agreed to live together. If you didn't like it, you should have said so. I couldn't, seeing how Ethan was treated.
I replied in a firm tone.
If Ethan is such a bother to you, then give him to me. I'll raise him properly. And from now on, I'm gonna live with Susan, so you guys can move wherever you like.
What?
That's too sudden. It was you who came over the day after I called, wasn't it?
I snapped back at the complaining couple.
Well, I want to get back to our conversation properly. Give me a sec.
After hanging up the phone, I made a call to a certain place and then headed home. When I got back to my dimly lit house, Mark and Jessica were waiting out front. They sat on their suitcases, looking tired and yawning. As I opened the gate, Mark raised his voice in annoyance.
You're so late. How long were you gonna make us wait?
Yeah, I'm opening it now. I could let this rude remark slide with a smile, thinking it was just for today. Jessica looked puzzled at the large brown envelope I was carrying, but I pretended not to notice and unlocked the door. Turning on the living room AC, my son and his wife, as arrogant as always, said to me, "Man, I'm beat. Mom, get me a cold beer. And some pepperoni. I'll have a lemon cocktail, and bring some cheese too." Casually they sat on the couch, stretching out their legs and fanning their collars as if ordering me around was a given. Even when I brought them their drinks along with my iced tea, they popped open their cans without a word of thanks.
By the way, you mentioned selling this house earlier. I didn't hear anything about it.
I replied calmly to Mark's irritated tone. I own this place. I can do whatever I want. Come on, normally you'd consult with the people living with you. Kicking us out just like that? That's not cool, mother-in-law. I don't need lectures from someone who leaves a 2-year-old behind to go on vacation. My son and his wife went silent, their faces darkening. How can a parent do such a thing? Oh, I guess it's not a big deal for you, Mark.
What's that supposed to mean?
You're not Ethan's real dad, right? Jessica froze. Mark glared at me.
What the hell are you talking about?
It's exactly as I said. Ethan's real dad is this guy, isn't it, Jessica? Looking at the photo I took out of the envelope, Jessica went pale. She snatched the photo, crumpled it, and stuffed it into her purse. I just smiled. I have plenty more where that came from. So, I guess I hit the nail on the head. How did you? Ethan told me, saying that apparently he has another dad. That blabbermouth. Jessica clicked her tongue in annoyance. You leave Ethan at the daycare once a month after having dinner and go on a date? Even though you never mentioned it before? I thought it was strange for you to dine out, so I hired a private investigator. Turns out, it's an old coworker from your part-time job. Mark's eyes widened in shock.
Hey, what the hell is this?
Visibly panicked, Jessica finally seemed to come to terms with the situation and apologized to Mark. I'm sorry. I was dating 2 of you. I recognized Ethan immediately from his pictures when that guy was younger. He looks just like the guy. But that guy has a wife, so I said Ethan was your child. As she rapidly tried to justify herself, Mark froze in shock. After we decided to get married, I broke up with him, but he said he'd give child support if he got to see Ethan. Come on, I gotta get that money, right? Oh, and I really didn't want to see him.
What are you even saying?
I nodded in agreement with Mark's response. No wonder, the photos I laid out on the table all showed Jessica smiling brightly, arm in arm with the man, or happily holding hands, entering what looked like a hotel. You know, if you have complaints, maybe you should earn more. Jessica pouted. It's 'cause you're on such a low salary, Mark. Aren't you embarrassed being a part-timer at 30?
What? Don't act all high and mighty, housewife. Plus, you're probably using that child support to buy all those designer brands. I don't want to hear it from someone who only thinks about themselves.
I looked on at the bickering couple with a cold stare. I had this suspicion shortly after they moved in. I was worried about the words Ethan had let slip, so I hired an investigator. Now I knew why Jessica would take Ethan out whenever Mark was working nights. Initially, I decided to keep it to myself because I didn't want to destroy Ethan's family. But after the recent trip, I realized having a couple like my son and his wife raise Ethan would only lead to his unhappiness. As Jessica stubbornly tried to justify herself, Mark laughed bitterly.
Ha, I've been raising another man's child for these past 3 years. Raising? When have you ever changed his diapers or given him a bath? Shut up. We're getting a divorce right now.
Jessica glared at me with fiery eyes.
This is all because you had to snoop around, mother-in-law. If you'd kept quiet, none of this would have come to light. Were you planning to hide it if no one found out? You're such a terrible woman.
Mark yelled at Jessica.
You just wanted to take it easy, didn't you? Deciding to live together to save on expenses and then dumping all the housework and childcare on my mom. Must be nice to just laze around all day.
Mark, you sure act all high and mighty, but are you in any position to criticize Jessica? I said with a hint of sarcasm, and Mark snapped back at me.
Excuse me? You got a problem?
No, I just thought you might be putting yourself on a pedestal. From the brown envelope, I pulled out the remaining investigation report and photos. Jessica's gaze fell upon them. Jessica's expression quickly changed. I heard you were fired after the manager warned you about touching a high school girl at a burger place? You said you quit because the atmosphere didn't suit me. Hey, don't twist my words like that. Mark retorted with a disgruntled look on his face. I just poked her on the cheek, stroked her hair, and hugged her from behind. I didn't touch her breasts or anything. She's overreacting. Ew, gross. Jessica struck a pose of hugging herself and distanced herself from Mark. If you touch someone without their consent, that's a problem. Yeah. I just touched because they were cute. If cheeks and hair aren't okay, where is?
Nowhere, of course.
Jessica snapped.
What is a 30-year-old man doing with a high school girl? If you want to do that kind of thing, go to a nightclub.
It's cool because they are a first-time, normal high school girl. You womans wouldn't understand. Puffing out his chest, Mark looked defiant. I held my forehead and took a deep sigh. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw a picture of Mark hugging a high school girl's shoulder, but he probably didn't mean any harm since he took a selfie and posted it on the internet. Hey, don't look at me funny, both of you. All men like teenage girls, don't they? All right, let's just get a divorce then. Jessica said, shaking her head in exhaustion. Why don't you marry a teenager next time? Not that they'd want you, though.
Fine, I will.
If we're done here, please gather your belongings. Decide on your next move as soon as possible. Until then, I'll allow you to store your stuff here. I pulled out some leftover cardboard boxes from a recent move and placed them in front of my son and his wife. Without a word, Jessica began to methodically pack her clothes and bags into the boxes. Mark, grumbling all the while, started to pack as well. Once they seemed to have everything in order, I made a call on my cell. Sorry to keep you waiting. Please come in. Soon, the front door opened, revealing 2 men in button-down shirts. My son and his wife, looking bewildered, were shown police badges. You're Mark Smith and Jessica Smith, correct? Yes, that's us. We've received a report of child abandonment. You're under arrest. What? The officer sternly questioned them. You two went on a trip to Guam until yesterday, leaving your 2-year-old son at home, correct? Yes, but seriously? We're getting arrested for that?
We just went on a little honeymoon trip.
We'll discuss this at the station. Of course, I was the one who reported them. A few days in jail might make them reflect on their actions. Watching the 2 of them hang their heads and get into the police car, I whispered to myself. Mark and Jessica were released on probation 3 days later. It was probably the first time they had left Ethan alone at home. They had prepared meals for him. They had anticipated that I would return home in the evening, which likely contributed to their leniency, expecting it to be just a short period he'd be alone. From now on, I agreed to take care of Ethan. We arranged this agreement through a lawyer, ensuring the penalty when he fails to follow the agreement. Mark, who moved into a rundown 2-bedroom apartment, apparently can't afford his own living expenses. He probably couldn't manage living by his own. It turned out both of them were in debt and seemingly had plans to eventually burden me with their financial responsibilities. Since their plans fell through, Mark took on more part-time jobs, and Jessica reluctantly started working too. The two of them worked from the crack of dawn until late at night without rest, and I heard they constantly fought at home. My house quickly found a buyer, and a young couple moved in. They seemed very pleasant when they came for a viewing, so I'm sure they'll take good care of the place. I was worried Ethan might miss his parents, but for now, he's living life to the fullest. In fact, without Jessica and Mark scolding him or treating him coldly, there's no need for him to always be on his best behavior. He's become more innocent and cheerful. He's grown very attached to Susan and behaves just as a child his age should, occasionally keeping us on our toes with his whims. I switched to a reduced work schedule to spend more time with Ethan. Susan, who works in a 24-hour daycare from 6 p.m., and I have divided up household chores and always make sure our busy schedules don't impact Ethan. If Ethan ever wants to see his parents, I intend to let him. While losing my husband felt like a gaping hole in my heart, I've found a new purpose in seeing Ethan grow up properly. Susan and I want to shower him with love and raise him together.